When you think about someone trying to predict the future, do images of soothsayers and crystal balls fill your head? Respected futurists make predictions about the future based on current trends. They systematically explore the possibilities and what might emerge from the past. Do you envision the future as bleak, or are you full of hope for what might be? What does the future hold? It's easy to forecast that much of our current technology will become obsolete, along with many types of businesses. Adults of a certain age can name items and services that have become obsolete within our lifetimes, such as tape decks in the cars, drive-in theaters, rotary phones, milk being delivered to one's home by a milkman. What's familiar to us today that will go the way of the dodo bird in the future? What scientific advances might we see? What diseases might be eradicated? What medical advances should we expect? What will society look like? What jobs will be in high demand? Living in the present, the future may be a scary place if we aren't prepared. How can you strategize for the future? In this episode of What's the Matter, we'll examine what the future might hold for all of us. I'm predicting that it will be a fascinating look at what could be. Stay tuned. Dr. Julian Keith is the head of the psychology department at UNCW in Wilmington, North Carolina, and an expert in artificial intelligence. You think that's what we need to know about the future? That's probably the one topic that we all need to understand a little bit better.
It's certainly one of them, and it's one that I spend a lot of time thinking about. And I can't tell you that I can tell you precisely what is going to happen in the future, but I can tell you that there are trends lining up to show that artificial intelligence not only now is playing an important part in our lives, but it will play an increasingly important role in all of our lives. All of your interactions with Amazon, with Google, with Facebook, you think of those as being exchanges of information where you're trying to get some product from Amazon, you're trying to get some information off Google, or you're trying to pass along information about your life to a company like Facebook. But in the background, what those companies really are is they're artificial intelligence companies. And they're building models of who you are based on the way you're interacting with them. So Amazon is going to try to come up with models about how to market to you, how to market products to you. The next time you go on Amazon, it will update its model of who you are based on the kinds of choices that you're making. The next time you go on Facebook, it's updating its model about who you are based on what you're posting, whose pages you're spending time on. The next time you look up something on Google, it's updating its model of who you are based on the kinds of information searches you're doing. In doing that, in building these models of us, they have a more effective way of tailoring ways of nudging our behavior, ways of controlling our behavior to some extent. And those things, they're very subtle, but they're very profound in the effects that they have in our lives. The goal of these systems is to nudge our behavior, and not just to try to sell us things, but to nudge us toward political news sources, for example, or in some ways make us more caricatures of ourselves in some ways. It can trap us in these information bubbles. They can get information about us that allows them to make judgments about us that go beyond our own self-knowledge. They can make better predictions about your choices and behavior than you can predict in advance of your own choices and behavior. So that kind of thing is taking this game to a whole new level. But there are so many other things that are happening with artificial intelligence too, like automated vehicles. Vehicles are self-driving cars, and there's great convenience associated with it too. Imagine you pull up to work and there's no parking places, but you can tell your car to go park itself. And then when you want it, you just summon it and it comes to you. And it can drive to where you are, pick you up like it's an Uber without an Uber.
Yeah, but you stop and think about the ramifications of this technology. You don't need truck drivers. You don't need limo drivers. You don't need taxi drivers. A whole large group of employed folks are out of a job.
Drivers, that's the biggest employment segment in our economy. And so the question is, what's going to happen as we have more and more of this technological displacement of jobs? We have people being replaced by artificial intelligence. We talked about that a little earlier, about the role of computers now in fields where you would have thought they would have been far off limits, like oncology, complicated fields. You know, you're the doctor that treats cancer, that diagnoses it, does the pathology, comes up with a treatment plan. IBM Watson, I've been told by people who worked on the oncology project, read the entire body of literature ever published in oncology in the amount of time it takes a doctor to drink a cup of coffee. So it can digest this information and not just store it in a Wikipedia-style fashion, but store it in a knowledge structure where it can access it and gain new insights from it. Then look at a case, make a judgment about a case, and tell you the probability that it's right about this.
Yes.
So when it's making the judgment, it says, I'm 90% confident that this is this particular kind of sarcoma. But if you did these other two tests, I could increase my confidence and stimulate the doctor to go out and do those tests and get that information to feed it to it. There are artificial intelligence systems now that are writing for newspapers, particularly in financial sections, and producing the copy of financial articles.
You know, I'm so glad you brought that up. I want to know where artificial intelligence is going to go in the world of investments. And we'll be right back. Don't go away. We're back with Dr. Julian Keith, and you may recall when we took the break, just before the break, I said we're going to talk about investments and what the future looks like in terms of us making intelligent investment decisions, and you're going to share some information with us about that.
The vast majority of trades that happen on Wall Street are algo trades. They're algorithmic trades.
Yes.
Which means they're being done by computers that are following a set of rules. Many of those rules use elements of artificial intelligence. So they're machine learning rules where they're actually going out and looking at patterns of data distributed across long periods of time in the market and making decisions based on movements in the market. The challenge for a human trader is that you and I sit around and we're trying to make judgments about trades. If you try to do day trading, based on movements that you see, and you're operating on minutes or hours to make these decisions, whereas these computers are able to do it in nanosecond times.
So it's possible that brokers, watch out you brokers that are tuned in, they could be out of work. I mean, it's possible that I'll be dealing with computers directly with my smartphone. I'll be
or that you'll hire an AI to do it for you. We tend to make the same mistakes over and over.
Well, because we have an emotional component that AI doesn't have.
Yeah. I had a colleague that for a while, in psychology, we use rats often in research, and he used to say the difference between rats and humans is that rats learn from their mistakes. And humans will tend to make mistakes over and over. And we also tend to not start worrying about something until it's too late. We let it get on top of us and be a colossal problem. With AI, it doesn't have to deal with all these emotional things. It doesn't have to deal with avoidance.
Right.
It just looks at the data and tries to make the best judgments based on the data.
Where does all this go? We don't. None of us have jobs anymore 50 years from now? Are we all unemployed?
That's an interesting question. Are we? I wonder about that frequently, and I wonder if we can start doing things so efficiently, from farming to medicine and healthcare to managing financial markets and so forth, that humans are less critical and maybe in some ways impediments to efficient operations in those things. And we have a world of abundance because of that efficiency. Where do humans fit in? And that's something that worries me from the standpoint of our policymakers. Are they thinking about these things? People are really worried about job displacement, but they often think they actually misattribute where their jobs went to. They think they lost their jobs to immigrants, or they think their jobs were shipped to China, when really their jobs went to robots. You almost never hear politicians talking about these matters. They're taking the short-term view. They're looking at, what do I need to tell people right now to make them happy right now?
Well, they want to get elected next year or the year after,
Yeah.
so their thinking is always short-term.
It's always short-term. The cycle's so short. But these are big horizon issues. As fellow humans, we should look at this and say, we want these tools to be developed. We want these tools to help us. But we don't want these tools to lead us to a place where we are just irrelevant.
At what point does a robot with artificial intelligence have the same value as a human being?
That is a great question. Not long ago, Amazon, no, not Amazon, I think it was Google, noticed that two of its systems were talking to each other and using language that no one understood. And they were using it functionally. They were talking to each other in a manner that helped each other do their jobs better, but no human knew what they were talking about. So
now, if that isn't frightening, I don't know what is.
Yeah, and so they tried to unplug it. And some of my friends in computer science say, you know, they shut it down immediately when they saw that. And my first thought is, if it's a really intelligent system, it'll let you think you shut it down, right? It would want you to believe everything was okay. That's the kind of scenario that I think we need to be facing up to. We need to be thinking about as we develop these powerful technologies.
I'm going to leave on that note. We're going to get you back. I love this topic, and I know that we could spend hours talking about it. So thank you so much for being on the show with us today. We're here with Daniel Burris, a acknowledged, well-respected futurist who's written 7 books. How does somebody become a futurist?
Started out teaching biology and physics, so I had a science research background. I ended up starting 6 companies, everything from I had my own airplane design. I was actually a test pilot on that, to developing the first national real estate apps that we now use on our phones. So I've had a variety of companies, but 35 years ago is when I started my core company, and I was researching all of the latest innovations around the world. I could tell something was going on way back 35 years ago there were lasers, robots, fiber optics. There was even the internet way back then, although only universities used them. And I could tell something big was going to be happening down the road, where, by the way, we are right now.
Tell me about the future. What's going to happen 5, 10, 25 years from now? What's the process?
There's no shortage of trends about the future. The real problem is, hey, which ones are going to happen and which ones aren't? And I've come up with a way of putting all trends into one of 2 categories. One is hard trends. They will happen, guaranteed. And then there are soft trends, and those are based on assumptions about the future. I'll give you a simple example. There's 78 million Americans, and their hard trend, hey, they're going to get older. They're not going to get younger. We got 10,000 people retiring a day. And that allows us to predict a lot of problems and pre-solve them, or we can just let those problems happen. The idea is, let's not react, let's anticipate. Let's anticipate the problems and pre-solve them and see the amazing opportunities. So let me give all of our listeners and viewers right now an amazing opportunity that nobody's doing that you could all do. How about a smartwatch for the elderly? We're talking 80 years old and older. And at first you would say, well, they're not going to buy a smartwatch. They're over 80. And I would say, no, you're right. Who's going to buy it? You're going to buy it for them. And why would you do that? Well, let's say Grandpa likes to take walks and kind of forgets where he's going and gets lost. All he's got to do is ask his watch, "How do I get home?" and it'll tell him. Let's say that Grandma's watch rapidly moves 4 feet. What happened to Grandma? She fell. And if it's your grandma, maybe you ought to know that. And of course, we have many sensors in there now that can help people keep from ending up in the hospital. If it can be done, it will be done. If you don't do it, someone else will. So there's a great new idea for somebody out there right now using demographics and hard trends. What I'm getting at is there's amazing opportunities when you learn how to see the part that will happen in the future. You see, strategy based on uncertainty has high risk. On the other hand, strategy based on certainty has low risk. So as you look at the future, you got to say, is it just death and taxes and I'm uncertain of everything else? But we all know after spring comes summer, followed by fall. And we all know that when the stock market goes up, at some point it'll go down. And by the way, at some point it'll go back up again. Those are examples of cycles. But what I'm talking about with technology is another kind of change, one that is not going back and forth like a cycle. It goes in one direction and it's going up fast.
Seniors get lost, they have Alzheimer's, maybe they need direction home. So that's a pain point that maybe came to your attention. So yes, that's where there's going to be a need for that, so somebody's going to satisfy it. Is that what you do? You look for pain points and then think about how to solve them?
What we've got here is two things. Number one, there's the pain points, as well as people that are not happy and not satisfied. Those represent, of course, opportunities. And when you then look at either the demographics or the new technologies, these hard trends, you can see, wow, there's actually solutions out there.
Daniel, what should all of us that are viewing this show today do? What's our next move?
Look for those hard trends. So here's what I'd like you to do. Take 1 hour a week. By the way, that's doable. And in that hour, forget about the present. Think about the future. That's where you're going to spend the rest of your life. Maybe you should think about it. And in that hour, what you should do is ask yourself, what are the hard trends, these certainties, these things I know will happen? Because, again, personal strategy based on uncertainty has high risk. But if it's based on certainty, it has low risk and high reward. True for businesses as well. So make a little list of those hard trends you know will happen, and then relate it to an opportunity for you and for your business if you're a business person. And then pick one and do it, and you'll see some amazing things happen. Instead of just passively receiving the future, you'll find that there's much more power in actively shaping it.
Well, this has been very enlightening, I can tell you. I want to attend some of your workshops, and I'm certainly going to buy your books. Give me the name of your latest book, and can you buy it in all bookstores or Amazon?
The latest one is called The Anticipatory Organization, How to Turn Change and Disruption into Opportunity and Advantage. And you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to do something special for all of your listeners right now. I'm going to actually give them all and you a hardcover copy of this book. Because I know if you'll get it, you will like it, and you'll recommend it to others, and I'll do fine. So if you go to, the name of the book is The Anticipatory Organization. So if you go to the, THEAO book, theaobook.com, I'll send one to you. You got to pay a couple bucks for shipping. I'm not making money on the shipping. I really just want you to get that book.
Daniel Burris, thank you so much. That's a very kind and generous offer. I'll be buying or getting that book in about 10 minutes. Thank you so much for your time today. Very enlightening. We're going to have you back on in the future, I can promise you that. Thanks for being with us.
You got it.
If you're interested in a free copy of Daniel Burris' book titled The Anticipatory Organization, go to www.theaobook.com. That link is all you need to obtain your free copy. The future can be a scary place, but it doesn't have to be. Spend some time planning your long-term strategy because if you're lucky, the future is a place you'll be spending a lot of time. That's all for today on What's the Matter. I'm Chuck Whitlock. And remember, if it matters to you, it matters to us. See you next time.